So yeah, today I'm going to talk about the Agile mindset, communication, collaboration, and coaching in a virtual world. So I'll lay the foundations of what we think the Agile mindset is, and then we'll talk about some techniques and approaches that we've used to encourage communication, collaboration, and coaching. Before we do that, just a quick introduction to myself. So as you can see, a very nice photo of me being a lot skinnier than I am now. But I'm James Martin Young. I've got 10 years experience in project management and consulting. I started my career way back when at Capgemini and have latterly been working for MIGSO P Cubed, or as Nick said, P Cubed, for the last 6.5 years. I'm a principal consultant and engagement manager, and I actually lead our community of practice for Agile in the UK. I come from a kind of more traditional PMO and project management background, but have worked with clients over the last 4 to 5 years. With
James, sorry to interrupt, James. It's come up on presenter setting. I thought it was going to just show your slide. I don't quite know what the issue has been there. I don't know if there's any way of changing that. If not, we'll just carry on. But
let me. Is that better?
That's the one. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yes, as I was saying, more of a traditional PMO and project management background, but I've latterly been focusing on Agile delivery and hybrid, so working between Agile and Waterfall, a focus on change and transformation, and all of these skills being used across multiple industries, so across all of our industry sectors in MIGSO P Cubed, so financial services, public sector, energy and manufacturing. Enough about me. So now we're going to talk very briefly about the Agile mindset and what we think that means. Now we could refer back to the Agile Manifesto or the Scrum Guides or Scaled Agile or Scrum at Scale or many other plethora of literature within the Agile community. However, what we found in MIGSO P Cubed is that when we talk about Agile, we're talking about 4 main components: Agile values, principles, mindset and culture, frameworks, and ultimately business agility. These are supported by 5 kind of core elements that we work with customers and clients to develop. And I will focus on a couple of these. So I'll read through them all, but early value delivery, quality solution, people and empowerment, communication and collaboration, cadence and iteration. The 3 that I really want to focus on today are people and empowerment, so building cross-functional teams, and especially now in the pandemic, looking at them in a virtual context. So how do we build and empower people in virtual teams? Communication and collaboration becoming ever more difficult working remotely. How do we maintain those communication structures and focus on what used to be face-to-face communication? And how do we really build a drumbeat and rhythm into our teams through cadence and iterations? How do we make sure that there is a regular drumbeat for our teams to perform? When we work with customers, we often see that we need to move them into what we call the Agile mindset. So moving them from their position of traditional, hierarchical, and what we call a fixed mindset. So where they focus on being in a specific role or not recognizing failure as a good thing, so it limits their abilities, not being able to push their horizons, seeing challenges as impediments and blockers rather than opportunities for growth and new solutions, and actually looking at getting frustrated when they're presented with challenges within a project context. And what we really want to do when we start working with customers, and what I think would be really great for people to encourage when working with their own teams, is moving them to what we call a growth mindset. And this really aligns with agility and Agile. So using failure as an opportunity for growth, understanding that failure is just a learning exercise and an opportunity to create new solutions, focusing on value, not just work done, but actually value to the customer. So when we deliver something, is it valuable? Is it usable? We want them to try new things, so innovate. Look at, Nick was just talking about the new technology that people presented yesterday, using that technology to better improve how we deliver projects. Using feedback as a constructive mechanism, working closely with your end customer, working closely with your business if you're delivering change projects, understanding what they really need in terms of delivery. Being able to prioritize, this is a really crucial point. Being able to effectively prioritize, as Nick said, 1 in 200 projects fail. And often that is because they're focusing on the wrong things. So how can you really start to narrow in on prioritization? And I think probably the most critical and one that I'll talk about throughout today is how do they empower others? So in that agile mindset, being able to trust and empower your teams to deliver what they know is the best solution for the customer. So taking all that into account, and obviously the context of the pandemic that we've all been living through for the last 18 months to 2 years, how do we build and empower agile teams using virtual collaboration platforms? So we've worked with customers over the last 2 years, and actually we've found innovative ways of doing, of continuing project life and making sure that we deliver outcomes. And this slide really is a combination of what we've learned in terms of building teams. And everyone will be familiar with Tottenham stages of team development: forming, storming, norming, and performing. And I won't go through those in detail. But what we found is certain elements enable us to get through those stages as quickly, or if not quicker, in a virtual context than would be in a physical world. The first is laying the right foundation. So making sure that when you're launching a new team, or you're starting to work with a new team, or you're setting up a new project, you make sure that you lay the right foundations. And this could include setting up introduction meetings, making sure you've got touch points in place, making members feel welcome. Critical to this is making sure that they have a virtual team space. So the office may not exist anymore for a lot of people. So making sure that you've got that virtual team space, whether that's an MS Teams site, a Miro, a Confluence, whatever that may be, making sure that they've got an area where they can go and understand that that is the project space or the team space. And making sure that they've got a mechanism for support, whether that be their line management structures, a coaching structure, which I'll talk a little bit more about throughout the presentation, or even just the team themselves, making sure that they're all making each other available for support throughout this process. Ownership. So enabling the teams to really own the way that they want to run the team. Get them to create working agreements, have sessions to form and understand how people want to work together. So things like, what time are we working to? What should or shouldn't be said within team meetings? What are the parameters in which we need to work? Getting people to really understand these and write these down and get them out in the open is a really, really good way of getting people through those kind of first stages of team development. Agree a suitable cadence. So this is where we talk about rhythm, making sure that everyone is comfortable with the number of meetings, the cadence of the meetings, the timing of the meetings, and really getting the team to drive what they want in terms of those meetings. And then empower the team to own and drive the interaction. So yes, you can lay the foundations, and yes, you can provide that structure. Ultimately, the team need to own their own destiny. So allowing them to essentially dictate and figure out what suits them best. What works for one team may not work for another. So ultimately, taking feedback and working through that is the best approach. Maintenance. So once we've set the team up and we've empowered them to own how they're working, we need to make sure that that's maintained. So ensuring communication is regular and spontaneous. And how do we do that? So the regularity is, as we said, through cadence, making sure you've got the right team meetings, making sure you've got other sessions in which they can collaborate, but then allowing for spontaneous communication. So making sure they've got ability to chat to each other, sharing phone numbers, making sure that they've got access to a tool which they can collaborate with. What we found works really well as well is setting time aside in the day where people are not expected to attend, but coffee mornings, for example, where we just talk about things that aren't necessarily work. So just sitting in front of a screen and talking to people about work endlessly is not the most fun thing in the world, and it's not conducive to building that team mentality. So enabling people to have that space to talk about their weekend, or moan about their kids, or talk about other things outside of work is a really, really powerful thing in terms of building that team mentality and making sure that relationships are developed throughout. Now, face-to-face communication is king, and Agile will tell us this, but how do we replace it? And hopefully some of the things that I've spoken about just now, and hopefully some of the elements which I'll talk about throughout the presentation, will enable us to do that and maintain that team ethos. improvement. And we couldn't talk about agility and the agile mindset without talking about improvement. We always want to regularly review and improve. So making sure that we have time to do that is critical. Setting aside time for retrospectives or just informal discussions about what's not going well or what is going well is critical to making sure that the team are able to improve. And then being able to prioritize those solutions to those problems is also something that we need to work with. Evermore, there will be a balance of virtual and physical working, and hybrid working is the future of many businesses. So we need to regularly review and adjust our balance. So 3 days might work, 3 days in the office might work for someone now, but actually that might change in the future. And actually, currently our offices are closed in London, so I'm working at home full time, and we'll need to review that when circumstances change. And all these components together are critical in terms of forming virtual teams. To support forming those virtual teams, we need to make sure that we give people the right tools to do so. And I've mentioned a few things already about collaboration. Here we've got a series of tools around planning, workflow management, digitization, prototyping, and collaboration. Now, I won't talk about planning and digitization and prototyping. Those have all been discussed yesterday, and I'm sure there'll be more discussion throughout. What I really want to focus on is collaboration, and this is just some of the tools that we've worked with customers over the last couple of years, and looking forward to working with new customers on going forward. For me, the ones I'd like to call out are MS Teams. One of our customers went from 0% virtual to 50% virtual practically overnight by implementing Teams. And we helped them really start to use that platform. It's a great collaborative tool. It's not perfect, as we know, but it really does enable teams to interact and give them that virtual space that they need. Some of the other tools, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail now, are Miro and Mural. They're interactive and collaborative whiteboards, and have been a lifesaver for us in both developing project teams and delivering project outcomes. So what are collaborative whiteboards? And hopefully you'll see the videos playing in the background. Apologies, these are internal whiteboards. I couldn't put client information on here. But essentially what you can see is the top left-hand side, we've built a virtual team space. So this is our Agile community of practice in the UK. And we regularly use this Miro board to both run work, interact, share insights, and really start to collaborate using a more innovative platform. Everyone can join in, it's real time, and it's also stored in the cloud, so it's saved in the background, and you don't have to worry about sending things out afterwards. It's just a constant workspace that's always there. You can see we've linked out to other sites, so our internal, what we call Navigator, our internal IP platform, we're able to link out to those as well. In the bottom right-hand side, you'll see more of a workshop focus. I'll just rewind that. So this is a workshop that we ran to define our OKRs, our objectives and key results for Q2. So this is quite old now. But this is a workshop that we ran, and you can see all of the insights that people were able to put down on the platform. And we've actually found that this can work better than an face-to-face workshop, where you've got various grades and more junior people nervous about writing things in front of a room of people on a whiteboard. What you actually find is that being behind a keyboard and then able to write things down without people seeing that they're writing them encourages people to really give their perspective and feedback and helps identify solutions that may not otherwise have been identified. These are really, really powerful tools. Mural is another one. Unfortunately, I didn't have any examples of this to show. They're very similar platforms. I encourage you to use these with your teams. And ultimately, I talked about empowering your teams being really, really important. And this is something that I worked with a customer very recently about developing a way that we could simply understand what empowerment meant for them, and also how we could measure how well they were empowering their staff. So empowerment is critical, and it means different things for different people. So the first stage is breaking it down into manageable components. So define what empowerment means for your team and for your organization. So this could be just an individual Scrum team, or it could be a department of hundreds, or it could be a whole enterprise. Get representatives from everywhere and ask them, what does it mean to you to feel empowered? You can then start to break these down into component parts. And you'll see here that we've got seven components. I won't go through them all, but these are an example of what empowerment meant to another organisation that we worked with. Once you have this, you can break it down even further, and you can go down to the ends of the earth. But what we really started to do was look at how do we measure whether people feel empowered against these 7 components. So using surveys, focus groups, verbal feedback, anecdotal evidence. How do we know whether they're feeling empowered against these elements? So do they have a clear vision and intent? Do they understand it? Do they have the right resources? Do they have access to the right tools, etc.? And then secondly, we started looking at leading and lagging indicators as to whether we were putting the right elements in place to support moving the dial on the left-hand side. So when we asked people whether they had a clear vision and intent, did we actually publish a clear vision and intent? Did we publish? Did we regularly update? Do we communicate that out? Have we measured how many people are actively using Teams? Have we measured how many people are actively got access to Teams? How many people have access to the collaborative whiteboards? And by measuring these things and bringing them together, we're able to really understand what interventions we need to give our teams to make them feel empowered. The critical one, which I haven't mentioned yet, is authority to make decisions. And this is really difficult to measure, but I implore you to really understand where you can push decisions down your management structure. The quicker you can make decisions, the more agile you can be, and the more effectively you can improve your flow and deliver work. Now, we're not expecting that people can adopt these things really easily and quickly without support, that support network which I mentioned. So we're going to talk quickly about the power of 3-level coaching. And this is something that we've worked to develop over the last couple of years. And it's a coaching model which we really encourage our customers to adopt when we're working with enterprise level customers. It focuses on the 3 levels that we've identified within organizations. So the team level, the program or department level, and the enterprise level. And what we really talk about is that coaching is important at all levels, and it's really critical to supporting the adoption of agility within an organization. Bringing leaders on the journey is a really important component. They're the ones who are able to make decisions and really make change, to making sure that they're coached in the right way to make those decisions is a really important component. Working with program and department teams is also critical. This is really where you start to develop methodologies and standards and push those out or present them for people to pull them into their teams. So this is a really good way, and coaching at these levels provides the right guardrails and the right standardization for people to adopt that agile mindset. It allows them to know what bounds they're able to work within. And really where the magic happens is empowering your knowledge workers at the team level. So coaching agility directly into the teams that are delivering the work, whether that be code or building cars or whatever work that might be. How do we push agility into those teams, coaching them on things like Kanban and Scrum? All of these components working together provide a great support network within an organization and enable you to build a team or a team of teams that really understand and consistently adopt the agile mindset. But coaching in itself is not the only thing that will get you there. And these are 5 things that I think are really, really critical in terms of building agility within your organization and doing it in a consistent way that you grow the capability. Firstly, we need to establish a baseline from which growth can be measured. And there are multiple ways which we can do this. I'll talk a little bit more about Mentimeter and the assessments when we get to part 5. Number 2, we need to ensure a consistent understanding. So I've briefly touched on what the agile mindset means, but actually really getting down to the nitty-gritty and getting a level set of everyone in the organization understanding what's expected of them and what they're able to achieve. And also what tools and methods will enable them to get there. Training is a great way of doing this, making sure that you're training all of your staff and giving them the same training so that they have a consistent understanding and a consistent verbiage. Create a support network of coaches at all levels. So this refers back to the 3-level coaching model that I just talked through. And then number 4, engage with other areas of the business, such as HR, to ensure that reward recognition and new skills and ways of working. But this isn't just HR, it's other things like operations, your project controls organization. Making sure that the teams are able to interact with these other parts of the business is critical. One example is where we helped a big investment bank deploy scaled Agile across a department of 500 people, adopting new roles such as product owner, product manager, release train engineer, scrum master. And actually what we found is that they hadn't spoken to their HR department to understand what the career path meant for those within moving into those new roles. So how could they start to focus on the new roles and adopting a new mindset if they weren't even sure what their career prospects were? So we worked with HR to develop a model and a capability model, which then rewarded recognition in the right way. So laying those foundations is critical when moving towards these new approaches and methodologies. And then finally, at the top of the loop here, we've got regularly measure progress and adjust your interventions accordingly. So this is really, really critical. In terms of agility and Agile, we always talk about measuring, and whether that's through data, whether that's through surveys, whether that's through anecdotal evidence, whether that's through retrospectives, we're always talking about regularly measuring. Mentimeter is a great tool that we've been using lately with a couple of our customers. It's essentially a survey tool that presents in an interactive way, and I encourage you to go and look at it. But what we've actually developed is some assessments, and we've been working with Scaled Agile to develop some of their assessments and make them more friendly for customers to use. And we found that actually running these on a regular basis, providing assurance and identifying interventions that could be made to improve agility has been a really, really useful way to encourage agility within organizations. Now we're going to talk about the importance of continuous reflection and improvement. And one way that we often encourage our customers to do this is to set time aside for retrospectives. They're a really, really powerful tool, and they're talked about I think in every Agile framework that you'll ever see. And essentially, they're an important tool to enable teams to decompress and identify both things that are working well for them and things that could be improved going forward. Making retrospectives a habit is an important tool for continuous improvement or relentless improvement in Scaled Agile. Making sure that you've got them regularly in the diary and making sure people understand that they're an opportunity for them to come and be in a safe space is a great way of highlighting issues that may or may not otherwise be picked up. They directly lead to problem solving and solutions on how to improve the team and ultimately delivery of your project outcomes. And we're not just talking about implementing retros at the team level, we're talking about implementing retrospectives at all levels of the organization. So at the team, at the department or program, and also at the enterprise level. Often at the enterprise level in the program is where we identify larger issues or blockers or impediments that need to be resolved and would enable delivery across the organization to be improved. Some bad habits, which I encourage people to stop doing, is always focusing on delivery outcomes, always focusing on the work, not allowing teams to reflect on what's going well and what's not going well, overloading teams with no time to learn, not enabling them to improve their own capability, and just focusing on the issues and not actually allowing time to problem solve and come up with solutions, and then prioritizing those solutions to be implemented. What I would encourage people to do is vary how you facilitate these sessions. So whilst retrospectives, as I say, are a good habit, doing the same thing over and over again is often not the best solution. So really, how do we start to vary how we run these sessions, make it regular and make it fun? So as I said, we need to make sure that we keep people engaged. And I'll talk a little bit now about how we can do that. So in a virtual world, it's becoming ever more difficult to engage teams. Often when you're face-to-face, you can sit in a room, you can use a whiteboard, you can use other kind of interactive tools, you can have fidget spinners on the desk, and you can keep people engaged. Again, I'll refer back to the collaborative whiteboard tools here. So These are both retrospective sessions that I've run with customers in Miro. And there are plenty of other tools, so Mural and others, where they provide templates for retrospectives. These are just two of the ones that are standard that we use with customers. You can create your own. There are many ways to run a retrospective. And what we found is actually varying from week to week, or varying from sprint to sprint, or varying from iteration, increment to increment, how you run these retrospectives is critical. On the left, we've got your standard kind of what's going well, what's not going well, and what do we want to improve. Although we've kind of framed it as rose, thorn, and bud. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a more, I was going to say innovative, but probably not innovative, but a different approach to retrospectives, where we talk about kind of 4 aspects. So the sailboat retrospective is all about what the wind pushing us forward. So what is really driving the team forward? The sun, what made the team feel good in terms of their achievements this time round? The anchor, what's holding us back? What impediments did we encounter? What do we need to mitigate? And then the risks. So the reef, looking forward. So what do we think is going to impact us going forward, and how do we start to resolve some of those issues? One thing that I haven't put on the slide, but I would encourage you to do, is once you've identified the issues on here, is set time aside for problem solving. So yes, for example, we've said that technical debt in the bottom right-hand side are a future risk. So how do we solve that? Do we allocate capacity within the team to focus on resolving that technical debt? Do we deprioritize other components? This element is really critical in terms of making an impact and ensuring that your teams are able to regularly improve. So the project team of the future. Just in summary, what we wanted to talk about today was communication. So laying the right foundations, making sure that it's regular and often, and not always just work focused. We mentioned a couple of things you can do. So coffee mornings, a buddy system is something that we found really works really well. We've hired a lot of people throughout the pandemic that have never been into our office, but actually we've put a support network around them with coaching, career coaches, buddies, line management, and industry teams. And we've made sure that that communication is regular and consistent. Collaboration. So we've mentioned a few tools, so Miro and Mural, making sure that we've got the right tools in place, MS Teams, or even if you're using the Google Suite, that's great too. Making sure that the teams understand how to use those tools effectively. So training your staff. Something that I didn't mention earlier, but I will mention now is our organisation did something really good when the pandemic hit. We started a campaign called Work From Anywhere, and we trained people on these collaboration tools. So MS Teams, Miro, Mural, even Jira, some of the other tools which are in the background. We trained people on them to make sure that our consultants were able to help customers build their virtual teams. And then ultimately empowering your teams. So this is where you really start to see shifts towards the Agile mindset, which is empowering your teams to make decisions and implement solutions that they know are right. And finally, coaching. So we've talked about engaging at all levels. This is from the C-suite all the way down to the teams delivering the work. Making sure that you're engaging in the right way at each level is critical in terms of developing that Agile mindset. Leaders are the ones who develop that strategy, and that strategy needs to be in line with agility. So being able to fail, learning from your errors is critical in terms of adopting that Agile mindset. Providing support and structure to your staff. So again, using the coaching framework, using the cadence and iterations of certain meetings is all a great way to make sure that teams in a virtual world are engaging and become more effective. And finally, I'll leave you with consistently reflecting, learning and adjusting. So using that ethos of constantly learning and implementing solutions quickly to resolve issues that are impeding the team is critical. So regularly running retrospectives, regularly allowing teams to upskill, and regularly prioritizing solutions which otherwise would not have been prioritized. And on that note, I will finish there and I'll invite people for questions and answers.
Thank you very much, James, for that. We've got a few questions have come in, so we'll ask you those. We've got a couple of minutes, and as I said before, any we don't get to, we will cover in this afternoon's session, which I believe you are attending the discussion this afternoon, so we'll be there to have a bit more of a chat about that. And there's about a 15-20 second delay, so please do type your questions in now and I'll get round to them. The first one that came in just said, what a great session. Not technically a question, but a great compliment to you. So well done, James. Thank you for that. Next one is, how do you use these virtual collaborative tools in workshops when you have half the group in person together and half dialing in virtually? Do you have any tips?
Yeah, it's a really good question and something that we come up against quite often and latterly. So actually the retrospective on the final slide on the left, I had exactly that situation. One thing that I found helps is nominating a facilitator in the room. So someone that is in the room and logged onto their laptop, and often ask the team to go on mute. And if they want to discuss and just put one ticket up, they can do. Or if they want to essentially raise multiple tickets and just get someone to scribe, is probably the way to do that. That's what I found works the best for me. There are probably other ways that you could do it. You could have made people bring their laptops into the room if they are laptop based. If they are only desktop based, then that's more difficult. But yeah, I think the facilitator in the room, so nominating someone from a client perspective who you may have had a chat with in advance to say, this is how I want it to work, is probably the best approach that I've seen used for those collaborative platforms.
Sorry. Thank you for that. Another question is, having virtual teams will entail additional learning and skills by the PM and the customer. How have you found the experience and what hints and tips can you share, especially the customer side, as these platforms are not cheap?
Yeah, so something that we've worked on at MIGSO Cubed is a learning framework. So it talks about various different aspects and responsibilities. So things like responsibilities of the team, responsibilities of the individual, and responsibilities of the management structures. And I think those are all critical. So enabling the team to learn together through training and consistent, giving people the right platform and tools to individually learn. So things like LinkedIn Learning are a great tool and we use within MIGSO Cubed, or even just giving them access to training materials or IP, intellectual property that an organisation may have, and pointing them in the right direction. And then management responsibility. So actually helping management give time to the teams. So one thing we've done with one customer is saying that every sprint, one day is a learning day, and you're not allowed to have meetings. So that is personal learning time that people need to use in terms of upskilling. And now, obviously, working in a virtual world, the first couple of sprints are going to be focusing on the collaboration tools and virtual tools. But actually, going forward, it's even more powerful because you start to learn and train and encourage more thinking around the delivery of the outcomes of the project. So someone's got a problem, they can go and learn the solutions to that problem. So that's one thing I would say is allowing, focusing on all of those elements. So not just looking at what an individual can do, but looking at what every proponent of that organisation can do. And then secondly, allowing people to have the time to do it, which is always difficult in a project context.
Thank you very much. And I think noting that it's sort of 10:10 now, I'll draw a close to questions. There's one that I didn't get around to, and I know there's a couple that have been sent in before. So please do keep typing your questions in. I'll take a note of them, and we can have further discussion with James this afternoon. But I'd just like to say thank you very much, James. I thought that was a fantastic session. I found it really interesting, really insightful. I agree with the question that wasn't a question that came in. So